What is up, everyone? Crunchy Frog here, and it's been just about a week since the latest zombie map for Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Shattered Veil released to us, the public, with Season 3 of Black Ops 6. And so today I wanted to put together a nice little review of sorts, kind of let you guys know my initial thoughts after playing through this map for about a week. Now, once again, this is mostly a first thoughts, first impressions type video. I would love to maybe a year or 2 years from now do a nice little retrospective on all these maps to give a more in-depth video essay length type review. But for the purpose of today's video, we're just going to go over some of the good, some of the bad, and kind of my overall thoughts on the map itself. And as always, for videos like this, I want to hear you guys' thoughts. So make sure to leave a comment below your thoughts on Shattered Veil. And if you haven't played it, just let me know what you thought from the gameplay that you see. This was just recorded, just a random round that I played, not trying to do anything fancy, just kind of learning some of the Easter egg steps, stuff like that, and that'll be layered going on in the background. So as always, guys, if you do enjoy these review type videos, make sure to leave a like as it helps others find the channel. If you would like to see more COD content, including Black Ops 6 news, zombie content, and more, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you would like to see all videos up to a day early, as well as other perks, make sure to click that join button to become a channel member today and support the channel monetarily. So with that all out of the way, let's get right into it. And as always, we love to start these reviews with a little bit of positivity here and basically go through all of the good things that I like about this map. And I will say ahead of time, there is a lot. I do really enjoy this map. If I had to give you a little TLDR before everything kicks off, I do just want to say I very much so enjoy this map. As a matter of fact, I think it is possibly, as of right now, my favorite Black Ops 6 zombie map, and I definitely recommend everyone who has Black Ops 6 or has Game Pass, download the game, download the latest update, and give it a try. So the first thing that I really enjoyed about this map was its location. I love the kind of creepy mansion vibe, and I really love that there is kind of the dichotomy with a scientific area underneath that has kind of contrasting vibes and contrasting art styles. It's really cool to have two little phases of the map like that. I also enjoyed that this location makes sense in the context of the story. Now, obviously, zombie stories are kind of all over the place, but that's an entirely different animal for another video. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a location that you could tell they just handpicked to be interesting and then tried shoehorning in a story. They very much so had a laid out story, a plan for where these characters would go and what kind of story beats they wanted to hit, and then they made a great map out of that kind of, outline along the way. And once again, I do really enjoy that they took a lot of time to craft the kind of mansion aesthetic, the creepiness of it, some of the, destruction around the mansion. And then whenever you go down below, you kind of have that clean, kind of scientific, kind of militaristic approach to kind of clashing art styles, but it really works for this map and kind of almost makes it feel like two separate maps. And honestly, it gives me a lot of vibes from the map 5 back in Black Ops 1, where you had the Pentagon area up top, and then once you got down to the bottom, you had another kind of area with the war room, and then you actually had a third area whenever you descended into the research area. And it kind of helps break up the map and, it makes it feel a lot bigger and a lot more interesting, a lot more content packed, if that's the right term. And I really enjoyed how they pulled it off in this map. To kind of go along with that, there's just great vibes and great world building that they took the time to add into this map. And in my opinion, I know you've heard me say in some of these past reviews for some of these zombie maps that some of them didn't feel like actual zombie maps. They just felt like little arenas to play around in. This one actually gives me the feel of a traditional zombie map. Now, there are some exceptions to that, and we'll explain that later in kind of the bad half of the video, but suffice to say, it does actually feel like a handcrafted zombie experience for once. And with that, and a big part of that is, it feels like a real lived-in space at times. Now, we talked about during my review of the Tomb, make sure to go check that out on my channel, the Tomb just kind of felt like a random geometric arena that they set you in to just train zombies. And that was about it. There was nothing there that made it feel real or feel like a cool space to immerse yourself in. And this has kind of the opposite effect. Now, I know some in the community will call it clutter and they hate that there's random desks and random couches with books everywhere and stuff like that. But to me, it makes the map feel more immersive. It makes it feel, I know this is a wild word to use, but realistic, right? It brings you into the map, makes you kind of dive in and get more invested in the map. At least that's what it does for me. And that's why I liked a lot of the classic maps, is because they were very immersive. You felt like you were there in a lot of respects. And this map kind of starts to give you that same feeling. I also enjoy that they have little callbacks all throughout the map, and we'll talk about some of these and some of my points here. But one of the first ones that I noticed when I hopped in was the fact that Sam, obviously, spoiler alert, whenever you get down into the basement, you meet Sam, the AI, but it's kind of built into this weird circular computer orb thing. But if you notice, it is a subtle callback to kind of the form that Sophia took, which was the AI in Black Ops 3 in the map Gorod Krovi. Very similar things, right? Obviously, they're both AI. This is kind of their mainframe, so to speak, if you want to use like movie terms. And, you know, they're both like, they take on this sphere-like object. They kind of look similar. You know, I don't have a side-by-side picture in front of me as I'm recording this to say how closely they resemble one another, but it's definitely a nice callback to, you know, once again, Sophia back in Gorod Krovi, and I really like that subtle touch. And obviously, there's a lot of other callbacks to other maps and games, and we'll talk about some of those in this video. But I really appreciate that they've done a lot of good callbacks and kind of hints and spiritual successor type things here with all of the maps in Black Ops 6. Next up, the boss battle is awesome. Now, spoiler alert, I know you guys have seen this all over the internet, so it's probably not too much of a spoiler, but the boss battle is actually you fighting a T-Rex. In this case, it's called Z-Rex, right? Zombified Z-Rex. But, you know, I was very underwhelmed by the Tomb boss fight. As a matter of fact, I was almost angry over the kind of lameness of the boss fight. You just shot a mirror a whole bunch of times, and that was the boss fight. So I'm really glad to see them step back up and kind of bring the level of boss fight up to the other maps in this game. And it kind of continues that trend of very interesting and visually appealing and interesting and novel type boss fights, right? We obviously have fought a Kraken, a gigantic statue. Now we're fighting a T-Rex, a skeleton of a T-Rex come back to life and be turned into a zombie. It's awesome. And I love that they turned a thematically sensical prop, right? The fossil in the main area of the mansion kind of makes sense. Is it a little bit out there? Yeah, but it does make sense in the, you know, context of the map. It wasn't a crazy to see them have a dinosaur fossil like a lot of these super expensive mansions do, right? It's almost like an art piece for them. And so they were able to work that in as opposed to just cramming in a very obvious prop to then be used later. And that's kind of in great contrast to how I felt about the Golem from Citadel. I felt that it was a very cool boss and it was very interesting, but it felt really shoehorned in. From the moment you drop into the map, it doesn't fit with the rest of the map. You can tell that they had a boss fight in mind and they just kind of jammed it in there. And while that might still kind of be the case here, you could definitely make the argument that not a whole lot of mansions around the world have a gigantic full-on T-Rex fossil in their grand foyer of sorts. And maybe it would be better suited in a museum map. Either way, it just feels a little more at home, and it feels like they, once again, they weren't kind of shoehorning stuff in. They were a little more careful and a little more deliberate in their approach here. I also really enjoy the new special zombie for the special zombies rounds that, you know, the Hellhound type experience, which are the toxic zombies. In my opinion, they're a lot better of an enemy than the parasites and vermin that we've had on other maps, and they provide a challenge, but not like an annoying type of challenge, right? And they also play into the final boss battle. They integrated that very well, and they used the mechanics of like the acid pulls and everything to make the boss fight zombie weak and everything like that. Like they're well incorporated and well thought out, you know, as opposed to just these vermin spider things that they just toss at you every 5 to 9 rounds. Which I felt should have just been terminus specific. These type of zombies work best when they're specific to a map. They give a map a little more ambiance, a little more creativity and uniqueness compared to the other maps. But that also has the, you know, kind of the flip side effect for the zombie types themselves. It makes them more interesting and gives them a little more, you know, I guess, I don't know, fun to be had as opposed to just cramming the same zombie into every map. So we'll see how often they kind of cram the toxic zombies into future maps. But for right now, it feels very thought out, fits thematically. They used it in the boss fight and everything. I really enjoy these. And once again, they are a challenge. They can get annoying, but they're a fun challenge. They're not overly broken or, overly spammy or anything like that. I also, kind of in that same vein, I really enjoy the new mini bosses, which are the Elders. I feel like they're a meaningful challenge to the gameplay loop, and they bring in kind of a new gameplay loop, a new gameplay system, whereas the other zombies were just kind of annoying or bullet sponges and stuff like that. And obviously these can get annoying, especially if you don't deal with them quickly, but that's part of the fun. That's part of what you have to learn to prioritize them over maybe the horde of zombies that's closing in on you, because they can make that horde 10 times worse. And I also feel like these make the map feel unique as well. I think this, and I could be wrong here, I think this is one of the first unique little special mini boss type zombies that are introduced in this game, and so the fact that they're introduced in this map makes them feel unique and makes the map feel more unique as well. I also feel like they were incorporated very well into the Easter egg quests. Again, they're part of one of the steps. You have to kill several of them, and it kind of fits in with that step. I just feel like they're very well implemented and they're very fun to play against, and they offer a brand new challenge that isn't stale or annoying or overly broken in one way or another. And to kind of tie in with that as well, kind of the flip side, no more amalgams, thank God. Amalgams are by far my least favorite zombie of any type in any game ever made by Treyarch. They are just the bane of my existence. They're way too bullet spongy. They're way too annoying. Their grab mechanic is a pain in the ass, especially if you get glitched. It's just, they're an annoyance, and I hated that they were on every single map, especially in high rounds where they start to get spammed. It was one thing to get spammed by, the manglers or some other zombies, but amalgams were just a total nuisance. So I'm glad they're not here. Obviously, I think they can spawn in if you allow the elders to kind of run rampant for too long. They can kind of evolve zombies into amalgams, but obviously that's kind of more your fault if you let it get to that point. So I'm glad to see that they're not just copy and pasted into this map once again. Next up, I actually really like the wonder weapon system on this map, that being the ray gun V2 and all of its variants, and also as well bringing back the Wunderwaffe. Now, I will say, and we'll talk about this later, not all of the variants are created equal, so it's not the greatest thing ever, but I really like to see the fact that they brought this back. I know they did a very similar thing in, I think it was Alpha Omega in Black Ops 4. I did not play that map, unfortunately. I didn't buy the season pass that year. But it was very cool to see that kind of variant style of wonder weapon brought to a fan favorite in the V2 that hasn't been in games for several years. I also love that they had more voiceover work than Tomb. Now, I know there's still some ongoing debate and ongoing issues with AI concerns and AI protection for the voice actors, so I'm not sure what point of their negotiations or remediations they are in those discussions. I can't tell if these were all recorded recently or maybe if they're just throwaway lines that they pieced together. But there at least seems to be a little more talk and not as generic references. That's one of the main things I look at, and one of the main things I hated in the Tomb is you could tell a lot of the voice lines were so generic that you knew they weren't necessarily recorded specifically for that map. They were just throwaway lines that realistically could be used on every map, and you could tell that no new voice acting was done for the Tomb. In this one, there's definitely some more unique dialogue. It feels a little more fleshed out. It feels a little more curated, not as generic and slapped together. So I'm not sure if maybe some of the actors got together and maybe solved their differences with Activision and recorded new lines. Someone with a little more knowledge to that whole legal process than me would have to answer that. But regardless, it feels a little more curated. And then obviously there's actual voice acted cutscenes, including Nolan North, I think is his name, reprising his role as Richtofen. And so overall, just it adds to the story and the immersion and everything like that. Something that I felt Tomb was strongly lacking. Next up, I really enjoyed the secret areas of this map. Now, as you know, as you progress through the Easter egg, there's several secret areas that you end up opening up. Some related to the rituals, some related to getting the ray gun V2 variants. Either way, they're very cool and they add replayability because not every playthrough will you activate every single secret area. Sometimes only if you're going for the main Easter egg or only if you're going for a certain variant of the ray gun that playthrough. And sometimes you might not open any of them at all. So it lets the map feel more fresh and more kind of evolving and dynamic. You know, you can't just see everything at a moment's glance and after opening 2 or 3 doors, right? You have to work for some of these areas, and some of them, like the snake chamber for the 1v2 variant, is actually really visually appealing and really cool and actually kind of fun to train zombies in. So it actually adds a gameplay element as well. So I really love that they did that. I hope they do that more going forward. Next up, Double Tap Root Beer is back. Finally. You know, the fans have been asking and begging for this perk to make a return for honestly years at this point. Basically, throughout the entirety of the Black Ops 6 lifecycle, people have been spamming Twitter and Reddit and everywhere else, asking them to finally bring back Double Tap, and in this map, it returns. And I have to say, the machine that they use, the vending machine type object, is so cool. I love the fact that whenever you buy the perk, the little saloon doors open, the little robot, you know, zombie guy kind of starts shooting, and it's just a very cool experience. And I really, really, really enjoy that not only did they bring this back, but they made it cool. They made it interesting. They didn't just slap the old vending machine model from World at War in there. And I think it adds more to the character and immersion of this map. Now, I will say that I'm not quite pleased with how it works in the game, and we'll elaborate on that in just a little bit. But overall, I'm very happy that Double Tap is back. Next up, and again, we talked about this earlier in the video, how there's a lot of callbacks, a lot of wink, wink, nudge, nudges to past games, and one of those is there's a lot of callbacks to Shadows of Evil, which is kind of unexpected. I didn't expect them to go there, especially, it's just subtle things, right? The fact that you have to do 3 rituals and everything like that in order to progress it, it just kind of reminded me a lot of Shadows of Evil without being a full-blown Easter egg or, you know, reference to the Shadows of Evil Easter egg itself. It was very subtle, and I love that they're kind of incorporating elements of past maps without being too heavy-handed about it. Next up, I think the Pack-a-Punch camo is actually really cool. It's unique and interesting. They've done a good job mixing it up every single map. While I don't think it really quite fits the map from a aesthetic or tone perspective, it almost seems like a 60s like groovy hippie type camo, to be honest, which maybe would have fit with like a 1960s map or something like that. Either way, it still looks great, and especially as you work your way up to tier 3. Next, I think overall, and this is one of the biggest factors for a map being fun, especially nowadays, with Easter eggs and the main quest line and everything being at the forefront of everyone's zombie experience, and that is that the Easter egg quest seems really straightforward and actually kind of fun to do, especially to do repeatedly and to learn and get better at it. Now, some parts can be annoying, but it doesn't just feel hard or overly obtuse just for difficulty's sake. And to kind of go along with that, the Wonder Weapon quest is also very straightforward and fun. I actually enjoy hopping in a match and pretty much every single time going through getting the Pack-a-Punch open and then going through the steps to get the Ray Gun Mark II, right? It's not, in my opinion, it's not like overly difficult or overly time consuming. It's just legitimately fun steps, a cool little challenge to do, all while you're trying to survive against the horde. So yeah, overall guys, that was about wraps it up for all of the good things I had to say about the map. Really enjoying this map so far. However, it's not without its faults, so now we'll kind of skip over to that part and kind of discuss everything that I feel the map could have done better. And the first of which is the flow. Some of the map flow in different parts of the map in different areas can be a bit confusing, especially the general layout within the mansion itself. There's a lot of similar looking areas and corridors and kind of a confusing layout, especially as you're getting a handle on the map the first couple of hours that you play it. I know myself, I've played several hours, and while I generally know where everything is and, I'm working through the Easter egg and stuff, I still occasionally get lost or kind of, find myself saying, where am I? How do I get to this certain area? It's just kind of confusing. It's not the best layout I've ever seen, but that kind of lends itself to the more realistic elements that I said before. It's a little more immersive, and that's kind of how a mansion might actually be laid out, as opposed to them making a zombie map and then also just kind of cramming in the fact that it is in a mansion. So I can respect why they did it, but I will say if you're trying to learn the map for the first time, good luck. You might run into some issues. Next up, and I alluded to this earlier when I said that not all of the ray gun variants are created equal. And unfortunately, I have to say that the marksman variant, the single shot, type variant, I think it's yellow, is the color that's assigned to it, is absolute ass. At least in my opinion. Some of you may disagree in the comments, but nothing seems to beat the SMG ray gun. Like, they all feel very unbalanced. There's a clear winner, at least in my book, and all my friends who've played it, they all agree. And the marksman is very much so much worse. The shotgun's alright. It's kind of a middle road between the seemingly overpowered SMG variant and, again, the complete ass marksman variant. I also kind of wish, along the same line, I wish there was a fourth variant. Right? They used to, whenever they did these variants, whether it be staves or swords or bows or whatever, they always give you four. One for each element, one for each player. Typically, these are built around 4-player kind of experiences. And we saw with the single ice staff back in the tomb, I thought that was weird. And now I find it's weird that there was only 3 variants of the Mark II ray gun. Now, obviously, you could say that the default ray gun is its own variant, but I'm not going to count it. I think they should have done another 4th variant and maybe a 4th, little quest as well. That would have filled out the map even more as well. Maybe they ran into time constraints. And next up, speaking about the ray gun and its upgrade steps, I do have to say that I found the electric upgrade step where you have to walk the abomination around to be absolutely mind-numbing. It's super unpredictable. It's not manipulated or replicated. It's just kind of super unpredictable and oftentimes glitchy. And I will say, out of all the steps during the Easter egg, that one was definitely the most frustrating and unrewarding. Even if that does lead to the best version of the ray gun, so I guess it kind of equals out. But still, I feel like they could make the behavior a little more predictable and a little more influenced by the player's actions, so that step goes a little bit smoother for everyone. Next up, like I referenced up in my kind of section where I was talking about double tap, I feel that the actual perk benefits are very underwhelming for double tap. I feel like the perk is good, and obviously some of the augments that you can unlock are pretty cool, but I just feel it could be better. It's missing the pizzazz of and the effectiveness, for that matter, of the 2x bullets, the kind of effect that previous versions of the perk had. If you don't remember, back in the day, originally it just upped your fire rate, but then they changed it so that it would use 2 bullets and still only cost 1, so it effectively doubled your damage. And I think for a game like Black Ops 6 that has a little bit issues with high rounding because your damage caps while the zombies' health keeps going up and it gets a little bit crazy, especially with the special zombies, I think having that double damage, even if it was added as an augment, could have been more rewarding. Now, I know, again, there are some augments that come close to this double damage, but they all come with stipulations. It's not just a straight up every bullet you shoot splits into 2 bullets and does double damage like some of the previous games. I feel that's how it should have worked in this game. It just feels like they kind of needed to unnecessarily nerf this perk this time around, and I'm not too happy about it. Now, this next point is kind of a big point. It's kind of an overlying issue. But just know it's not necessarily an issue with this map specifically, but rather all of Black Ops 6, kind of an issue that I have with all of Black Ops 6 zombies. And that means at times the art direction and mood just still feels generic, or as one of my friends put it, Warzone-ified. And it's kind of a hard concept to put into words, and it could honestly warrant its own video, possibly an entire video essay unto itself. But I don't know, maybe it's just the UI, maybe it's the shared engine that every game has nowadays. We talked about every COD feels the same, but it just feels generic. It could be a lot more. I don't know. It could be some of the immersion breaking elements that you see. Maybe the UI, like I said. Maybe the fact that the game has shifted less from a survival type standpoint that the original Zombies mode was, to being more gamified and more, kind of over the top in recent entries. And I just feel like something's still off. Even in such a great map like this, just Black Ops Zombies as a whole, while great, just still feels off. And I know that this map does a great job visually speaking and world building and stuff like that, but it still just feels generic at times. Again, not the map, but just the game mode as a whole. And going back and seeing old gameplay from Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, everything just felt more stylized and cohesive and handcrafted, whereas the new maps just kind of feel generic and maybe too overly realistic, and it ruins what otherwise would be a very, very cool and very interesting map. I would almost like to see them take both Citadel and this map, the Shattered Veil, and kind of port it into Black Ops 3, if that makes sense, a backwards port, just to have that same level of like the different lighting engine that used to be. It wasn't all about realism. It was a lot more, I don't know, like an art style. It was almost like an art project. There's a lot more expression, and it just felt cooler and more immersive and more handcrafted than these latest entries do. And it just kind of makes me sad, because I know that this is just the direction that COD as a whole is going into. We talked in some of my videos about how the multiplayer experience suffers from this as well. Everything feels generic and just samey across the different, titles in the franchise nowadays. But yeah, I feel like this holds the map back. I think the devs did a great job with what they could do, but this kind of homogenization of the engine, of the art style, and everything across different games really hamstrung what could be otherwise an amazing map. So overall, guys, I just wanted to give my overall conclusion. I've ranted at you for enough time already, but I really do enjoy this map. Once again, I think it might be my favorite map so far in Black Ops 6, and I can see myself coming back to play a whole bunch in the future. I look forward to beating the Easter egg. We haven't done it yet. We've done a lot of the steps, tried to, optimize them, get them down quicker and quicker so that we can hit the boss fight in a reasonable amount of time, but we have not beaten it as of the recording of this video, but I'm really looking forward to doing so because the map is very fun and the boss fight looks super cool. It just feels like Treyarch actually took some time with this map and actually sat down and crafted a lot of things with it, and gave a little more care than we've seen in some of the other Black Ops 6 maps, especially the last entry, the Tomb. Now, overall, I still feel like it feels a bit generic because of the new COD engine and kind of the new direction that COD is taking. It doesn't feel quite as much of a handcrafted, moody, atmospheric, and memorable experience like a lot of the old maps did back in classic Call of Duties, but overall, that's just more of a Black Ops 6 issue or even a COD franchise issue as a whole, and not necessarily this map's fault. I think the devs did a great job, and if you haven't played it yet, I highly recommend getting out there, getting in there, and definitely dropping some rounds in this map. So now that my portion of the video is over, I want to hear what you guys have to say down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of this map and what you think of Season 3 overall for Black Ops 6. So, till the next time, guys, you all have a good one.